I have no problem with the employees here saying, what did you do last week? And if you can't come up with 5 things that you did, maybe you shouldn't be employed here. So again, this is an easy task. It happens in the private sector all the time.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy throwing his support behind DOGE's latest push for greater government accountability. Elon Musk now requiring federal workers to list 5 accomplishments from the past week. And if they do not respond to his email, they face losing their job. The deadline set for midnight tonight. Fox team coverage begins now with Kim Strassel on deck. But first, FBN's Hillary Vaughn live on Capitol Hill. What can you tell us about this latest attempt by DOGE to reduce waste?
Hi, John. Well, it's triggering a lot of people and it's hitting a nerve. While most Americans would love for an opportunity to brag to their boss about all the things that they got done last week, some people working for the government, paid for by taxpayers, working for taxpayers, think that they are too good for that. Democratic Senator Tina Smith attacking Musk over this, using her favorite D word, and it's not Democrat. Smith saying, quote, "This is the ultimate D-boss move from Musk, except he isn't even the boss. He's just a D." Musk says he's already received a large number of responses and says those people should be considered for a promotion. Other Democrats say a CEO would never ask their workers to do this.
Imagine that you got this email tomorrow from your boss's 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 boss, who knows nothing about what you do. This would be like Tim Cook sending that email to every single Apple Store employee. If Tim Cook did that, we would say Tim is past his due date and doesn't know how to run a company anymore.
But Musk says this is not that complicated. It's a pulse check, saying, quote, "The reason this matters is that a significant number of people who are supposed to be working for the government are doing so little work that they are not checking their email at all. In some cases, we believe non-existent people or the identities of dead people are being used to collect paychecks. In other words, there is outright fraud." Republicans say this is a great idea.
The price tag that the taxpayers pay is right at $271 billion a year. Is it too much to ask for them to verify why they're making an average salary of $106,000 a year? I guess the arrogance of the workers who says that's a heavy lift is what's wrong with that's what the Americans are sick and tired of. It's not their money. We're the ones who are paying the bills.
And so some government employee unions are so upset about this that they're actually suing over the fact that Elon Musk wants them to tell him 5 things that they did this week. They filed a lawsuit in federal court in San Francisco over this email. John.
Well, Hillary, we don't need to ask you what you did last week because it's all caught on video.
That's true. Same
Appreciate
with you, John.
And we wouldn't need to ask because you do terrific work week in and week out. Hillary, thank you.
Oh,
Sandra?
thank you. That's nice.
All right. Thank you, John. Let's bring in Kim Strassel now, Fox News contributor and a Wall Street Journal opinion columnist. We're told that that meeting just wrapped. We'll have a play out for that shortly with President Trump saying in that meeting he thinks the DOGE email to federal workers, Kim, on their weekly duties is great. So he is standing by it and says the email was needed to find workers who are not working. Are you for this, Kim?
I think that's the important point here. Is you're listening to Elon Musk, and what we're discovering and a lot of things that he's saying is that the DOGE team is finding that a great deal of the federal government seems to be on autopilot. So it's just trundling along, and you don't really know where a lot of this money is going. And that doesn't just count for paychecks to federal employees, but how many Social Security checks are going out to people who died a long time ago? How many tax credits are being dumped into bank accounts for people that don't qualify for that money anymore or themselves have passed away? And it seems that we do not have those quality control checks going on. So that to me is the more interesting part than the substance of this, which is name 5 things. By the way, I can name 5 things I did this morning, but that shouldn't be a tough lift. I think there could have been some more coordination. That probably would have been useful so that everyone on the Trump team was on the same page on this, but it does seem like a worthy exercise.
Fair enough. I want to put a part of your Wall Street Journal column, a quote here on Trump's constitutional cleanup. You say the administration is courting lawsuits that could dismantle the Washington machine. These moves are unconventional. Most presidents roll with the bureaucracy they are given, but hardly lawless. Progressive litigators may soon discover presidents have a lot of authority to manage employees and programs. Seems Sean Duffy at the Transportation Department is leading by example. He put out a tweet indicating 5 things he did this last week. He said, "Mr. President, here's the 5 things things. It terminated the NYC elitist anti-worker congestion pricing, launched an investigation into multi-billion-dollar taxpayer dollars wasted on high-speed rail. He goes on to make his list, but we know that not everyone is joining in that capacity. Case in point, Kash Patel at the FBI and the Defense Department are saying that they are going to conduct their own evaluations. Does that in any way show you that they're split in how to handle this, or are they backing up the president in just a different way?
Yeah, look, they're backing up the president in a different way. And this was my point about miscommunication. I think you could have just as easily done this DOGE effort of the 5 things while also having consulted with cabinet heads to do it in a way where they felt comfortable that any information that was being sent, that there wasn't classified information or sensitive information that was ending up with the wrong people. And that's a legitimate concern. And I think these are some teething problems that we're going to see in the beginning of DOGE's efforts, which is it is this outside entity. You need that kind of distance, I think, away from some of these cabinet heads. But I think in some great big capacity, there has to be a little bit more coordination about how some of this rolls out.
Meanwhile, this is the take of one member of Congress, Democrat Amy Klobuchar. She went on The View earlier today, and she said this, she believes, is the real motivation behind DOGE. Listen.
He and Elon Musk, they're looking for money everywhere.
Yes.
And they are literally, costs are going up for you while they're giving the tax cuts to the rich friends.
Corporate profits.
And they're looking for money to do that. If any worker right now is failing their probationary period in the United States government, it is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's the guy.
Yeah.
Because what he is doing as an unelected
It's probably unconstitutional.
billionaire is, yes, and that's why you're seeing all these lawsuits.
Yeah.
Reaction to that, Kim?
Yeah, they're certainly trying to find money, Sandra, but part of it is to pay for the $36 trillion in debt, a bunch of which came from Democrats spending through the roof over the past 4 years. There's a lot of good benefits this money can go to, rebuilding our military, et cetera. There are other priorities. To suggest that it's going simply to the rich there's no evidence of that, and there's certainly no policy in place for that to be the case.
Just want to end with what is coming out of this meeting. Again, we're going to have tape playback here for our viewers in a moment. On Ukraine, the president just said NATO is a good thing if done properly. He says they could end the war in Ukraine within weeks. On a Russia-Putin meeting, he said he would be willing to go to Moscow at an appropriate time, Kim. He says May 9 might be a little soon for a Moscow visit. Does not see the problem with sending European troops as peacemakers in Ukraine. And Macron weighed in saying we're ready to provide security guarantees to Ukraine. We have to make sure we have deterrence. This was Mike Waltz this morning on expectations from Ukraine on a potential deal to end this war. Listen.
We expect the Ukrainians to realize the opportunity that this is, and President Zelensky to realize the opportunity that this is, to be co-invested with the United States of America in the future of Ukraine, in the future of its economy, and growing the pie in terms of its natural resources that not only helps Ukraine, but recoups these hundreds of billions of dollars for the Ukrainian people and for the American taxpayer going forward.
That was the National Security Advisor, Waltz. We're going to hear from President Trump and President Macron in their own words in just a moment. Final thoughts on that, Kim?
Well, you know, this is going to be Ukraine's decision as to what it feels comfortable with. And we've got a great editorial in our paper today about Russia's long list of lies and broken promises to Ukraine over the years. So there is going to have to be some reassurances there. Whether or not a rare earth minerals deal and economic cooperation is enough to reassure them, I think that's left to be seen. But I think this is why Macron's visit is important, to remember NATO's role here and remind the President of the United States about the greater stakes for all of Europe if Russia is left emboldened here.
All right, Kim, really appreciate you joining us on all of that. Thank you, and good to see you.
Question about DOGE, sir. Do you think that DOGE could benefit from more streamlined communications? There was that email telling employees to give 5 things that they've done last week. Agency heads then told people to ignore it, but Elon Musk...
about the last email that was sent, where he wanted to know what you did this week. You know why he wanted that, by the way? I thought it was great. because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to find, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group. So what they're doing is they're trying to find out who's working for the government. Are we paying other people that aren't working? And, you know, where is all that? Where's the money going? We have found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud so far, and we've just started. We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there, because maybe somebody stole the gold. Tons of gold.
Some of the agencies.
So I think it was actually, there was a lot of genius in sending it. We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people, please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
Some of the agency heads instructed their employees not to respond because they were waiting on further guidance. But Elon Musk's tweet said a failure to respond would be taken as a resignation. So there's been a disconnect in communications.
Yeah.
Are you concerned at all about that?
No. That was done in a friendly manner. Only things such as perhaps Marco at State Department, where they have very confidential things, or the FBI, where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them tell you what they're working on last week. But other than that, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too. So, you know, we're doing a real job. And we just had a poll come out, I guess the Harvard poll, saying that it's massively popular what we're doing.
It's the DOGE ultimatum. Elon Musk emailing over 2 million federal workers with this subject line: what did you do last week? It simply asks them to list 5 things they accomplished at work and says not replying by midnight tonight would be taken as a resignation. However, Fox News can confirm that the Office of Personnel Management has told agency heads that they don't need to fire people who don't reply to the 5 things emails, and that the administration will work with the individual departments. And while that all gets sorted out, President Trump is gladly backing up the DOGE mail by posting SpongeBob memes and doubling down at the White House.
I thought it was great, because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to find, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group.
Musk is also brushing off the backlash, saying that this email is a very basic pulse check. But, of course, there is outrage. Democratic Senator Tina Smith calling Musk a bad boss and using some salty words to say it. And others in the press were equally outraged.
Elon Musk has zero legal authority to fire government employees or force their resignations. These people don't report to Elon Musk.
This nonsensical email from Elon Musk acting like we're in kindergarten.
It's like an own the libs, make you cry more sort of environment, right? Where both Trump and Musk are performing for the MAGA base.
The new Trump administration is reveling in its bare knuckle approach to governing.
This is so sloppy with the way Elon Musk is handling this.
All right. So earlier today, Greg, the Harvard-Harris poll came out and said 76% of Americans support what DOGE is trying to do, asking people to show their work. The American Federation of Government Employees, that's the union, said that the email was cruel and disrespectful. What say you?
First of all, Jen Psaki, Michael Steele, you're not outraged that your coworkers just got doged. I mean, you just lost Joy Reid, Jonathan Capehart, Katie Fang. Who else did they lose?
Alexis Wagner.
Alexis Wagner. They all went over, but that's okay.
Really?
That's okay because in the media you never talk about that, do you? The thing is, this was obviously the email was just a test to see if you still exist. This is what you do for the George Costanzas, the people that maintain a position but not a presence. So it's a bureaucratic bird call. And I've had to clean house a couple of times when I was an editor, and you always start with the outside in, and you have to do things in a big way. And when you listen to these criticisms, it sounds exactly like what they said about the border. When we were in crisis at the border, there was nothing you could do about it. Oh, you can do the little things, but you can't do the big thing, seal the border, because it's too mean. It's too heartless. It's too insensitive. It doesn't show any empathy. And if you cast a wide net, whether it's DOGE or the border, you're always going to get the wrong people. But that's the argument whenever you're dealing with excess. Whenever you need to cut and the company's in trouble, they will always try to stop it by using that argument that it's inhumane. But the only approach to reforming a bloated system is cutting it quick and cutting it fast. And if you make mistakes and it's messy, at least you can rectify it. It's not like releasing violent felons into the general population who then kill people, or letting your troops die in a chaotic withdrawal from a foreign country. Bureaucracy is actually an area where you don't need a scalpel. In fact, a scalpel cannot keep up with the growth of bureaucracy. You need a chainsaw, you need an axe, especially when it's this dire and the people in the media and the politicians aren't telling you how bad it really is.
And it was Milei, the president of Argentina, who gave Elon Musk that chainsaw. What he did when he first came in, their government was a lot bigger than ours even, and it was a little crazy. He just axed, I think, all of a sudden, in one fell swoop, 18 departments were out the door. A lot of people in the private sector, Jesse, might be have empathy for people losing their jobs, but might be rolling their eyes at the suggestion that it would be cruel and disrespectful to ask for just a little update on what you did last week.
I updated everybody on what I did last week.
Oh, okay.
Here's my 5 bullet points. I had a pretty good week.
Yeah.
I worked on a federal holiday when everybody else stayed home.
Wow.
When
that counts as 2 then.
I made a brilliant and persuasive argument for DOGE dividend checks.
Not
Cha-ching! I annihilated Jessica. Audience loved it. Ratings soared. I hawked Fox merch.
You did.
Yeah.
Shamelessly, but effectively.
That'll buy you a year.
And it increased revenues here, $150,000. I also hiked home on Friday to save the company money on car services. I actually didn't do that. But this is what he's doing is no different than what generals do, CEOs. Ben Franklin, what did he say? What have you done to make yourself better today? What did you do to make your organization better today? So when I see a request like this, I'm inspired. Other people felt like it was demeaning. And if you think an email like this is demeaning, you're part of the problem. Because if you don't think you have to justify your job and you think you're entitled to your job, then that's why we need an attitude adjustment. This is what this was. This is an attitude adjustment. People need to be reminded that they're public servants. They serve the public. They're not there to serve themselves from the public piggy bank. Now, the fact that they're circling the wagons around these bureaucrats, it's infantilizing them. Like, you can't fire them. You can't email them. You can't make them come to work. This is like when Uncle Tony gives his dumb cousin a job at the dock that he doesn't have to show up for. He gets 6 figures, no paid job, but you can't talk to Tony. You can't email Tony. You can't answer. No one can say anything to Tony. He's privileged. And now bureaucrats have more special protections than the trans community did at its heyday.
What do you think about that Tony analogy, Jessica?
I get it. I know about Tony's nephew and how that happens. I just don't think it's applicable to what's going on here. And you would know that what Elon Musk did, this directive, was a good approach to it if everyone had gone along with it. But you saw all of these Trump cabinet appointees who instructed their bureaucracies not to respond. Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the State Department all said, don't worry, if you saw that email, don't say anything. So if it is going to save America, why don't the rest of the people that Donald Trump loves think that it's a good idea?
Well, if you're in the Pentagon, you can't Elon Musk email him and say, oh, I staged a coup in Cambodia last week.
that's an argument for Elon Musk taking a breather before he sends an email like that to millions of people and say, oh, maybe folks who work on classified information can't respond to this right away. Or maybe a federal judge who's going to get this email Saturday night or whatever isn't going to be able to talk about privileged information that's going on in their courtrooms, for instance.
I might just write back and say, see me, if that were.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
I'll
see
get
me.
back to you.
Especially people who want to curry favor with Elon and the rest of the DOGE department. Of course, they're going to say, see me, because they want a little bit of FaceTime. I don't think this is the worst thing in the world. And I'm sure there will be other instances where lines will be crossed. The sky will feel like it's falling. This is not the time to ring the alarm and say that we just went from orange to red. We're not quite there yet because, in the great words of Socrates, as written by Plato, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I would argue that there are a lot of government employees who've not been forced to examine their work because they do have a sense of entitlement. So if you have to sit there and figure out 5 things you did last week, 2 things can happen. One, you're completely worthless and you shouldn't be on the government teat and you should be relieved of duty because you're wasting taxpayer money. Or you're going to come up with a list that is so impressive that people will take notice. And those are the kind of people that we have to have left running government because there are critical aspects that have to be staffed. And I'd much rather they be staffed by people who are competent, hardworking, and not a bunch of fuss budget pearl clutchers.
Fuss budget pearl clutchers.
It might be the first time I ever said on the 5.
Do you ever, I always wonder, and then I'll shut up, how do Democrats think businesses work?
They don't think.
I think it's like, I think they take it from romantic comedies like, you know, a woman running a small boutique with carefully curated decorative pots and alpaca throws, and everything is just designed delightfully with a scalpel.
You think Bill Gates doesn't know how to run a business? Or Warren Buffett doesn't know how to run a business? Come on.
I didn't say that.
Well, but you're asking about if Democrats know how this stuff works. We're either
they
liberal
decide
elitists that have too much
not to
money
run
or
for office. There is nobody in the White. Well, I shouldn't say nobody.
I'm talking. I meant bureaucrats.
Biden, Kamala Harris, they never worked in the private sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your
All right,
face,
up
Jessica.
Next.
You're looking live at the White House, where President Trump is set to welcome French President Emmanuel Macron in about 15 minutes. Now, this is the first visit of a European leader, and it's somewhat of a diplomatic blitz. We know on Thursday he will welcome Keir Starmer of the UK amid high-stake talks about the war in Ukraine, Israel, NATO, and beyond. We will keep you updated on all the news as it happens, as President Trump is about to meet with Emmanuel Macron discussing tariffs, the European Union, and so much more. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host, Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Ainsley Earhart, Fox & Friends co-host. Marie Harf, Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. And Paul Morrow, Fox News contributor, attorney, and retired NYPD inspector. Well, the clock is ticking for federal workers to comply with DOGE head Elon Musk's request for productivity reports. He asked them to prove that they earn their taxpayer-funded paycheck. There's this email that went out on Saturday night. It was from the Office of Personnel Management, sent out to all federal workers, more than 2 million of them. And here was the subject line: what did you do last week? The email reads, as you see here, please reply with approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week. It also sets a deadline for tonight at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Tick, 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 fast approaching. Now, Musk says failure to respond will be interpreted as a resignation. He added this on X. The reason that this matters is that a significant number of people who are supposed to be working for the government are doing so little work that they are not checking their email at all. In some cases, we believe non-existent people or the identities of dead people are being used to collect paychecks. In other words, there is outright fraud. And President Trump is backing Elon Musk up on this one. Look at this. He reposted this edited SpongeBob meme to troll Democrats and other critics who are up in arms over 5 bullet points. So we know where President Trump stands. You know, Ainsley, we just saw the email. The email didn't contain a threat. Yes, the Elon Musk Truth or Twitter, whatever it was after, kind of emphasized there could be consequences. But I'm struck by the reaction. This is from a huge union that represents federal government workers. Look at what they said. This email is nothing more than an irresponsible and sophomoric attempt to create confusion, bully hardworking federal employees that serve their country. They're demanding the email be rescinded and an apology to all federal employees. Hakeem Jeffries decided to take it up a notch, and he said Elon Musk is traumatizing hardworking federal employees, their children, and families. I mean, I don't know that it's traumatizing to ask for 5 things you did at work.
No, not at all. If your boss asks you, what are the 5 things you accomplished last week? Then you just tell your boss. I think Elon's doing this. I think it is for fraud. We know the Social Security, they have lists and lists of thousands of people that are between the ages of like 100 and 150. Well, no one's living at 150 in America, right, or anywhere in the world. So they shouldn't get Social Security checks. Same thing's happening here. He's going through and he's making sure that these individuals are really working, that they are individuals, and and to make sure that he holds them accountable and make sure that people aren't just getting paychecks and that person doesn't even exist. So this is all to save the taxpayer money. I think the only thing missing here is consultation. I think that the heads of these departments need to be involved in this so that there's not friction between the heads of departments and Elon Musk, so that the Trump team is working together.
Emily, and that's a really interesting point, because you do look, and there was some pushback from NIH, from DOJ, you saw FBI, Kash Patel put out something, Department of Defense, the acting Secretary of Defense. So some of these individuals were not Trump appointees, some of them are acting. But nonetheless, you do have agencies pushing back a little, and we'll see where Trump comes out on the side of Elon Musk or some of these department heads.
Right, and I think the arguments varied amongst the agencies and for different reasons. So some were arguing privacy and security, which is a whole different argument than those knee-jerk reactions from AFSCME and NTEU union heads saying it's irresponsible, it's traumatic. I want to underscore that for a moment, because as a federal attorney, you could not make 1 inch of progress in terms of efficiency or productivity without the union knee-jerk pushing back. And it was so, at the time, disheartening to me to see people whose full paychecks and full 100% of their time, as they were stewarded and paid by the American people, were working on behalf of the unions. But at the end of the day, it stopped being a representation of the employee. It stopped being a representation of the employee against, the robber barons of the past and sort of these overreaching bosses. What it was simply a massively opaque protection and a bristling at the notion that you even had to account for yourself. And I posit legally, as employees, we are entitled to specificity from our bosses, right? You have to know, you have to have an articulable, point-by-point position description. So why can't the inverse be true? Why can't our bosses have the same specificity with our production, and productivity, so that they know exactly what we are doing and how we are complying with these position descriptions? At the end of the day, for efficiency, I think if the whole point is simply ascertaining those who are fraudulently collecting paychecks, then it should indeed go through the department heads and the team heads, because that's the only way to steward the thousands and thousands of emails that will now flood to Elon Musk. But if I was still a federal employee, I personally would be proud of what I had accomplished and would have responded immediately.
Maria, I think, there's a risk of oversimplifying all of this, because I do think federal employees fall into 3 buckets. You have the political appointees, some of whom are thrilled that this is happening. They see this as a revolution in government. Then you have this other pot of hardworking federal government employees. I don't think they care who the president is. I think they care deeply about their job, and that pot does exist. But that is not all federal workers. There are federal workers that have this attitude. This was an NBC anonymous communication that came to them. Saw this a few weeks ago. This is a federal employee at the Department of Veteran Affairs. A lot of us are going to stay out of spite, they said. We're here for however long we want to be here. I could be here until retirement. In 30 years, the Trump administration is only here for 4. What's wrong with trying to root out an employee staying out of spite?
Well, there are both legal problems, and I think we're hearing that from some of the unions. There are contracts that have been negotiated. But more importantly, this is just the latest in a string of attacks on public servants that have happened for the last month. I spent 10 years in the federal government. Most of the people I worked with at the CIA or the State Department were hardworking, patriotic, dedicated Americans. These federal workers aren't just in Washington, they're around the country. We had 1,000 Veterans Affairs employees fired by DOGE in the last few weeks, including some that manned the suicide hotline for veterans. We had FAA safety officers mistakenly fired, and people that work on avian flu. The reason our eggs are so expensive is because of bird flu. So moving fast and making public service employees feel like the enemy and make it seem like it's something that's dishonorable is very difficult for people across the country. And that's why you see people in red states and red districts going to town halls with their members and saying, I have honorably served my country for 20 years, and I got fired for no reason by Elon Musk, who, by the way, makes millions and millions of dollars from the federal government himself. And he's firing people who make $50,000 a year for no reason. So I think morally, this has been really disheartening to see how they're going at someone so rich as Elon is going after public service employees and not doing it with a scalpel, not having their managers be the one to do it. DOGE isn't managing these people. And at the same time, you know, people across the country can't pay their mortgages or put food on the table for their kids because they got fired from a job they thought had job security. That is not electorally or morally a good plan, I think, for Republicans.
I hear what you're saying, but in all due respect, I do think it's an oversimplification. I do think that there are employees that should be rooted out. I mean, Paul,
but that's not what they're doing, right?
Background
but aren't they all
knowledge.
still getting paid through September, so they could potentially get another job and then they have 2 paychecks?
Some of them are not.
Those that didn't take the buyout, I guess.
Some of them are not. Many of them are not getting paid.
But Paul, this is the background. This is why this matters. It's easy to oversimplify and point to some stories of individuals who got termination notices. But the background is this. This is not a Republican newspaper, a conservative newspaper. This is the Washington Post 4 years ago. Resistance from within the federal government. Listen to this. Less than 2 weeks into the Trump administration, federal workers are in regular consultation with recently departed Obama-era political appointees about what they can do to push back against the new president's initiatives. There was even a support group that took place about how to resist the Trump administration. That should not happen because that is undermining the will of the American people.
That's the deep state right there. And where was this scalpel under Obama and under Biden, right? Where is this surgical paring away of the extraneous employees who don't show up? This, by the way, was simply, I think, a ruse on Musk's part, which is, hey, let's see who opens the emails. Because if the email doesn't get open, my understanding is one of the metrics they're going to use is let's see who looks. Because if you don't even look, now, if you're on vacation, fair enough. You're in the Bahamas, that's how it went. Okay, you got an excuse. But if you're supposed to be at work and you don't even open up the email from OPM, Office of Personnel Management, and by the way, I'm glad he's in the Office of Personnel Management because last time I heard about them, they gave up my security clearance to the Chinese.
Same.
But that said, they have to figure out who's actually coming to work. The NYPD used to have a unit, believe it or not, that would fly around the world, mostly to South America, to see if the pensioner was still alive who was collecting the pension, because it goes right into the bank. You can access it anywhere. And they would find out that the girlfriend has been collecting the pension for 20 years because the guy died of a heart attack. So this is the kind of metric that you obviously need. And if you can't articulate 5 things that you did that'll keep you at least past the first bump of this thing, then you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be working in a
You could write outnumbered on Monday, outnumbered on Tuesday, outnumbered.
Your 5 coming. Yeah.
I mean,
Fox
that's
and Friends on Monday.
That's just it. If you asked me like 5 things I did at work, I don't think I would have a panic attack and say you're traumatizing my children. I think I'd write down the 5 things I did at work.
And you got to be careful of the managers. I know we all want the managers dealt in there, that's fine, but the managers get very close to these people. They go to each other's Christmas parties and everything else. And, you know, you got to be careful. I like a little bit of a hard approach, and then let's take a step back and do a real examination.
Yep. And we will see where this lands in just a few months. A lot of people excited that we might get a leaner and meaner federal government because you're paying for it after all. That's your taxpayer dollars.
Federal workers facing a midnight deadline tonight from DOGE to document their work in an email or potentially lose their jobs. Several agencies, though, have already told workers not to comply. Elon Musk taking to X on Saturday, posting, consistent with President Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman joins me now. And Congressman, look, putting aside the legality of that last part from Musk's post on X, the fact that people are going to be terminated, the lawyer in me says that can't happen just based upon a tweet. But focusing on the bigger picture, shouldn't federal workers that have their job because of our taxpayer dollars be able to find 5 simple things that they did at work in the last week?
Well, Todd, you know, if you look at this, there are roughly 3 million federal workers. The price tag that the taxpayers pay is right at $271 billion a year. Is it too much to ask for them to verify why they're making an average salary of $106,000 a year? Do you think in the private sector that single mom who is working 2 jobs at a restaurant can't justify where she was, or the hygienist at the dentist's office can't verify how many patients they saw? The absurdity and I guess the arrogance of the workers who says that's a heavy lift is what's wrong with that's what the Americans are sick and tired of. It's not their money. We're the ones who are paying the bills. We have a right to know. And Elon Musk is, the numbers don't lie on what he's finding out. And again, it's a great day, and this is going to be transformational for America to finally realize what these federal employees are doing. And many of them are good and can verify it, but to threaten to quit and for the labor unions to suggest that they not provide it, well, then risk losing your job.
Well, it's such a sense of entitlement, and you see it, they post it on social media, you see it on other media outlets. They feel entitled to these jobs, and they're very upset when people ask them to justify ultimately what they're doing. They don't seem to get that in the private sector. This is par for the course. You consistently have to justify what you do, and that's just how it works. But the left not a fan of this, of course. Democrat Senator Tina Smith ripping Musk's email, quote, "This is the ultimate bleep boss move from Musk, except he isn't even the boss, he's just a bleep. I bet a lot of people have had an experience like this with a bad boss. There's an email in your inbox on Saturday night saying, prove to me your worthiness by Monday or else. I'm on the side of the workers, not the billionaire bleep bosses." At this point, Congressman, who causes the left to lose their minds more, Trump or Musk?
Well, I think it's a combination. It's the genius of both Trump and Musk who are the American people are excited about what's going on. They finally have a control of something that they feel like we've lost control, particularly with federal workers. And again, the average salary is $106,000, Todd, a year. And to justify where you are, what you do for the last week? In the private sector, that would be they would gladly provide that information because, again, it's the taxpayers paying the bill for the federal workers. And in the private sector, you do that every day or you don't exist, right. You don't keep your business going.
Meantime, you are on the House Rules Committee. They are meeting today on the GOP budget plan. Should we take anything from the fact that the Rules Committee is meeting as a sign that maybe we are close to a deal, or is that just wishful thinking, Congressman?
No, I'm on the Rules Committee, and we'll be meeting today for probably 4 hours or more, which when flying day we do. No, I think it's a positive sign that it's going to go on the floor Tuesday, hopefully. And, this is a big deal. It came out of what will be proposed, came out of the Budget Committee, unanimously among Republicans. And so I think we're going to get it across the finish line now.
One of the issues that is definitely getting a lot of attention is potential cuts to Medicaid. At least that's what the left is saying. Here's your colleague, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, setting the record straight on that.
We're not looking to make cuts to Medicaid, but certainly work requirements are something that I don't view as cuts. Work requirements are just common sense. Cut taxes, cut some spending, help the national defense, and secure the border.
Congressman, will work requirements be part of whatever the final law is?
Absolutely, and that's one of the great things, as Jim said, that's not a cut. You got to realize Medicaid has grown since 2019 to 23, 51%, from $400 billion up to over $600 billion. So the left is going to say that it's going to be cuts. It's not. Hopefully we can get block grants to the states and let them decide on how it's allocated, but it's not a cut. As he said, is having a job and being able-bodied to work. It should be checked on. And it's like what Musk is doing. We have to verify that because they're getting a check from we the people.
And it's our money. Congressman Ralph Norman, thank you for your time getting up with us. We appreciate it.
Some breaking news a moment ago now. The Transportation Department head has now weighed in. Sean Duffy is telling his employees they should respond to Elon Musk and his request to tell us what you did last week. Sean Duffy's here now, Transportation Secretary. And, sir, good morning to you. Others have said, not so fast, Why did you tell your employees to respond?
I mean, every department is different. So if you're a SEAL Team 6 or a CIA agent or FBI agent, you might say, listen, that's not appropriate to actually respond to that email. But at DOT, I have no problem with the employees here saying, what did you do last week? And if you can't come up with 5 things that you did, maybe you shouldn't be employed here. So again, this is an easy task. It happens in the private sector all the time. And so I wanted our employees to actually engage and talk about what they did. And I think this whole movement, Bill, is potentially going to make people go, I'm going to come to work earlier. I'm going to stay later. I'm going to look at what Donald Trump wants me to accomplish because he won the election. And I'm going to fight and work to make sure I help him accomplish that because I'm a public servant. I don't work for a party or a union or a think tank. I actually work for the president. And again, I think this goes to that point. Just tell us what you did last week.
Okay, so we looked up, today's the 24th. As of today, this is what you filed. 5 things I did last week. Terminated the New York City elitist anti-worker congestion pricing. That was number 1. Number 3, saved $10 million a year by eliminating redundant and outdated landlines. Number 5, toured Burbank, California, traffic control tower, and on it went. I did that over the week. I put it in ChatGPT, and it gave me a great answer, by the way. So I felt okay with that. I also want to show you the incidents, the aviation disasters so far this year. You look at January 29, January 31, February 6, Feb 10, and then Feb 17, Delta regional jet flips. That was the one in Toronto. Question for you, Mr. Secretary. Some say this is not a time to cut employees, given the safety factors that are concerned. What do you say to that?
So, Bill, there's fat everywhere in government and in DOT as well. But just be clear. At FAA, we cut 352 people out of 46,000 people. That's 0.8% of the workforce. These were probationary workers. They were employed for less than a year at DOT. So these weren't the old school, really ingrained employees of the DOT. And not only that, we kept all the critical safety positions. And we actually hired more positions into critical safety, like air traffic controllers. We hired more inspectors for things like pipelines and for aircraft. So again, we have a safety mission, but for people to say that because we cut 352 people out of 46,000, that's a risk to safety, give me a break. I mean, that's just plain politics as opposed to saying, let's cut the fat.
All right, 2 more questions here. This goes back to the end of January. New York Times headline, here we go on screen, call for number 1. Air traffic control facilities are understaffed. Persistent staff shortages have raised safety concerns at many facilities. Staffing is so low that at least a quarter of the workforce is missing. Your reaction on that?
Yeah, no, it's a problem, Bill. We need to surge air traffic controllers. I'm going out to the main academy we have, which is out in Oklahoma City. We're going to surge air traffic controllers. It takes time to train them up through the academy and in the towers. We need to expand how many get through that school, but this has been a problem for a long time. So it's not just air traffic controllers. Bill, it's the technology. In a lot of these air traffic control centers, they're using floppy disks. A lot of your young viewers don't even know what that is, but this is really old technology. The communication system with the internet is not well served. So again, that doesn't go to air safety, but that does go to the technology that we use. Government takes 8, 10, 15 years to upgrade systems, and that's the enemy of progress. So we're going to do this very quickly. We're going to look at a year and a half time frame and do massive upgrades, improve the systems, help air traffic controllers, keep our skies safer. And again, time is the enemy. We're going to do it quick. Elon Musk team at SpaceX have come in and given their advice. Other really smart people have come in to offer their advice as well. We're bringing in America's best and brightest, whether it's air traffic control or advisors on technology, to make sure that, again, we have the greatest air traffic control system, safest system in the whole world.
I read that about SpaceX engineers. We'll see what kind of difference they can make. And the floppy disks are part of a museum somewhere these days. Sir, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see what kind of progress you can make. Sean Duffy, thank you.